Good evening. I am Steve, and this is my Rock and Metal Life. And we are talking about one of the subjects that is just central to everything I'm doing here with the blog and the vlog and everything else. I am going to talk this evening about a record that is just blowing me away right now for probably the last, I'd say, about 3 weeks. I have put a different kind of truth in the rotation in my mornings before I go to work. Before I play my guitar, I put on whatever I'm into at the moment. And a few weeks ago, I fired this thing up, and I have gone through this long process. This came out, of course, in 2012. Uh, didn't really dig it at the time, didn't get it at the time, is pretty much what we're talking about tonight. Um, and over the years, I read some stuff and other people's reactions, and then one time, maybe, I don't know, 5 6 years ago, I was talking about the record with Ace, and Ace told me that thing's a powerhouse. That thing's amazing, and I said, okay, I figured I probably missed it. As big of a Van Halen fan as I am and always have been, I am kind of guilty of skipping over the stuff that doesn't really grab me uh, the first couple of go rounds. And so I have warmed up to this record to the point where I put it in, like I said, about 3 weeks ago, and it just all clicked. All the buildup over the last, 5 6 years. I had a song here, a song there. I had, parts of this I really liked, um, parts of that I thought were good. The one thing about this record, um, and I think probably worked against it, was how long it is at 50 minutes long. And that's counter to the glory days of Van Halen. They had records that were barely 30 minutes long. Uh, but at the time that I bought it, at the time it came out, which I bought it right away, I came away from my first, few weeks of listening to it. My favorite songs were Out of Space and Blood and Fire. And, you know, it's embarrassing to say that now because those aren't really near the top. I mean, I like Out of Space quite a bit, but where I'm at right now is there's just so much guitar magic on this. And one of the things that's kind of strange, um, I know with all the the perception of Van Halen and the marriage with Image, and the era where they came of age and got popular. Um, One thing I think really gets glossed over is how good of I think composer is probably the word for Edward Van Halen, and this record showcases that, but in a different way than the stuff we were used to, because they were able to come out with records back then that had whatever they had, 10 songs, and an instrumental and a cover and a this and a that. And Edward, and the band didn't really write stuff that sounded similar. You went this way on one song, this way on another song. They had, Eruption. They had Ain't Talking About Love. Then they had Dance the Night Away. They had Women in Love. They had, they kept coming out with stuff. No record, nobody could accuse them of being, like the criticism of AC/DC, where, that stuff all this sounds the same, which it doesn't, but similar. But anyway, I'm going to talk about mainly two things here. Number one is, of course, Edward Van Halen's guitar, and the other thing is going to be L. Roth, because if you go on social media, if you poke around and you look for opinion of this, a lot of people talk about how Roth, good music on the record, but Roth just kills it. And I don't know that I would say that, because we all know how Roth is in concert these days and for a good long while now. And I always felt like Roth was able to do what he needed to do in the studio, and it came out cool. It came out awesome. All that stuff. He was the attitude that a Van Halen song would give you. He he did that in the studio, like nailed it. And I remember Eddie Trunk said something along those lines at one point that, whatever's going on with him now, on stage, it's kind of too bad. But, in the studio, the guy was always able to deliver. And, we know the band had concerns of him going into the first record. And he took vocal lessons and, you know, so on and so forth. But so there's that issue. And I would say when this thing came out, the first time Roth came back in the band, uh, the two songs that they put on here, "Can't Get This Stuff No More" and "Me Wise Magic," the two new songs. I mean, those are two of my favorite Van Halen songs off of any record. I don't know who agrees with me on that. I haven't seen much talk about that, but I thought those were great, great songs. And at that point in time, I thought, they are back. The Hagar thing's over. They're back to full strength, which is what I considered it at the time. And I just figured, 1996, Van Halen takes over the world again and rules. And then what happened after that, as we know, is the Van Halen train goes off in different directions. Um, so on here, I wouldn't say it's as good as the two songs on the best of, but Roth's okay. But um, I think we all know he's his voice. What he's done with his voice is so strange to me. I truly don't understand it, and it's hard for me to criticize the guy. I know, as the years go by, he's getting up in age, and yes, he was a screamer, you know, and well, what should it sound like at this point? I don't know. But the funny thing about Roth to me is with all these other guys, with all the Vince Neils and the Don Dawkins and all the guys that are famously John Bon Jovi, having trouble in concert, they're singing lower. The Scorpions, Klaus is singing lower. The band is tuning down a little bit. Now Roth, for whatever reason, he seems to be going up where he doesn't need to. Um, you see live, you take a song like "Dance the Night Away," and he was, I can't sing, I don't think I can sing, but to illustrate the point, have you seen her so fine and pretty? Fool me with her style, and he's pushing it a little bit, but he's low and he's kind of got that husky part of the voice. Okay, nowadays, have you seen her so fine and pretty? Like shrill and you know, just goofy, and in my mind, it would be easier for him to stay low and stay in there. And we all knew live he didn't do all the words all the time. He's always running around, maybe out of breath, but whatever. And so it seems to me he could do himself a whole lot better by not trying to go up, up, up. And he does that on this record, in a lot of spots. Again, the studio, I think, probably saves him in some spots. Because he can do whatever he can do in there, and they can work with it. But that's the puzzling thing to me about Roth when I see him live. It just seems like he's having the opposite problem of everybody else, and it's almost like he's trying to prove he can go up. And two things come to mind in my and I don't know how viable either of these are, but they both make sense to me. I just Number one is he's so excited. Because you see he's happy, and all he has now left of his image is that weird smile. Okay, so he's out there, he's happy, he's having the time of his life, and maybe that was what it was all the years in the past, where he skipped the words or whatever. He was so busy performing and entertaining. That could be it. The other thing the more I think about it, it makes more sense. It's almost like he can't hear. It's like he can't. He doesn't know he's doing this. It's like someone that's hard of hearing, and they can't really control their voice. And maybe this is just in my mind, but when I think about that, he seems like he's always screwing with the earpiece. And I don't know. I'm not I'm not coming up with a hot take here or anything. We know Roth has struggled live, or at least it's different. It's very different than what it was. He is who he is. He occupies his place in history and his place with this band. Uh, can never be taken away. Didn't really worry about his vocals way back when. Now I guess we do. So anyway, let's get to the record. And I'm not probably not going to talk about every track. I don't want to talk about Tattoo, and I think it's unfortunate that that was the lead single. And I get the idea here. Maybe trying to duplicate the success of Jump, coming out with the whatever that is. Not your straight ahead rocker, but you know, in a theme throughout this whole record, Roth's lyrics are clever, and he is turning phrases, and he is very much the same guy he was in his glory days when it comes to uh, writing lyrics. And maybe that's something that doesn't age well, and his humor, his subject matter, maybe just isn't. It doesn't. It's not as funny now as it was then, and some of that humor maybe just doesn't work quite as well today. Another thing, not Tattoo, but these other songs. There's a lot of lyrics in some of these songs. If you pull them up and look at them, it's just words, words, words. And again, that's a little different from your typical Van Halen song from back in the old days. But um, probably should have said this before I started with the tracks. Um, I said I was going to talk about Roth, and I have on Edward Van Halen's side. In my mind, this is all these years went by. Roth had a solo career and it petered out, and so on and so forth. Van Halen did the Hagar thing after Balance. They had Sharon. Uh, Everybody knows the timeline. And then here, this is what's this? 14 years after Van Halen 3. Ed's in a spot where he can do whatever he wants. And I'm ashamed that I did not pick up on this sooner, but this is really cool for him for this to be what he wanted to do at that time. And I know, you've got a whole bunch of songs from like the Van Halen Zero sessions. You got a bunch of those, and then you got new songs. You got Roth back in the band, and my thinking at the time was kind of like Roth had taken his medicine and he was back in the band, because remember, Wolfgang comes in and now it's three Van Halens and then Roth. And it seemed to me at the beginning, Roth was of the mindset that, hey, let's just do the work, let's get something going, let's get it out there, let's tour it. And I think maybe, Edward and the Van Halen guys, it seems like they were kind of like energized for their songwriting, and of course, Edward having his son, lifelong dream, I guess, to play alongside him in the band, and I think they were like they had a lot of energy going into this thing, and this is what they came up with, and it's cool because it's a guitar extravaganza, and then now that I say that, and I already said what I said about Tattoo, it is whatever everybody thinks it is. I just don't care for it. I don't think it's a great song. A little clever, funny, haha, and I could do without it. She's the Woman, You and Your Blues in Chinatown. Those are three, like She's the Woman's a good guitar song, and they played that live. I think that was a staple. You and Your Blues, pretty interesting song. He's throwing out all these references to blues songs, uh, you know, stuff from the past, and that's a little bit of a grinder. And Edward's guitar, he can do, he does great at whatever he does. So again, here's a change of pace. Here's a song that doesn't sound like any of the other songs so far. And then Chinatown, that's a good rocking song. Uh, Again, just the guitar seems like it's heavy, and the leads are fantastic, um, and it's good for me to feel like, okay, that's what he was up to at that time, because when Van Halen's not doing anything, these guys are reclusive. You don't know what's going on. We've got all this speculation of how many tapes are stacked up in 5150. And at this time, what they chose to put out was all this stuff that I think is like really good guitar stuff, like kind of like 1984. Good songs, great songs, some of them. And then if you just listen to the guitar, it's just I mean, it's a master class by, you know, the guy that I consider to be the best ever. And he is for me. You like who you like. Uh, for me, it's Edward Van Halen, of course, as you can tell. Um, I get a lot from Richie Blackmore. I get a lot from a lot of guitar players, Joe Satriani, so on and so forth. This is the guy that just about everything he does speaks to me. And here after Chinatown, we go to Blood and Fire, and this is kind of like a radio friendly song. Okay, and again, I feel kind of weird that it was the one of the more accessible songs on there, and it was one I really liked at the beginning. I thought, okay, that's the band, kind of like in hitmaker mode again or whatever, you know, really good song there. And then we got this run of three songs that these are just killing me. These songs are when I'm in here in the morning and I'm doing what I do on the computer. I pop this CD in, and a lot of times I jump to Bullethead and Bullethead add as is and Honey Baby Sweetie Doll. These are powerhouse songs. Um, Bullethead is about you know bad driving, tough driving conditions. So there goes Roth with his with all his silly uh, turn of a phrase kind of things. But the guitar is just really on fire. As is one that's really good. Uh, you know, it, Roth's story is a little bit kind of hard to follow or whatever. It's just kind of it's going to be hard for a song like that for someone to sing along with it or whatever. But the track itself is just a really cool song. And then Honey Baby Sweetie Doll with that heavy guitar, heavy rolling down, 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 down. And I thought it was after a good long while, and I don't know, I mentioned this to Ace, and he said, "Oh wow, I never thought of that." And maybe he never thought of it because I'm crazy, and maybe I'm wrong. But I thought that guitar riff there throughout the song, that kind of reminds me of "Out of Love Again" from Van Halen too. But I that's just me. I hear what I hear. Um, and then the Trouble with Never, not so good for me anyway. Out of Space, again, I really like that, and it goes back if you listen to Van Halen Zero, it's essentially the same riff, and they updated the lyrics because on Zero, I forget what was it called on Zero. I got it here somewhere. Um, was it called Let's Get Rockin'? I think it was. Yeah, and then after Out of Space is Stay Frosty. I got no. I listened to that one time, the first time I bought the record, and maybe one time since then. I just don't care for that. It's a blatant Ice Cream Man, trying to duplicate that in my mind. It just for me it just doesn't translate. Ice Cream Man's okay. I'm kind of tired of Ice Cream Man, to tell you the truth. When that comes on the radio, I I don't. I love the solo on that, but the whole long build up and all that. Not for me at this point. So Stay Frosty, no thanks. Big River, which I believe was Big Trouble. Is that what they called it on Zero? I think. But that's a good song. That I really like the guitars on that, the solo, and I like the way it, when it plays out. I like the way it finishes. And then Beats Working, not a big fan of that. So for me, they could have, there's 13 tracks. Beats Working, Stay Frosty. Uh, the Trouble with Never, it's got some good parts in it. It's just when I go through Bullethead as is and Honey Baby Sweetie Doll, and then the next one's The Trouble with Never. It's a huge come down. But anyway, this thing is a triumph. This thing is a big success. And I say again, I shame on me for not cluing into this at the time. Um, Van Halen, after the first six Roth records, I had like an up and down experience with them. I bought 5150 and Eat 'em and Smile, roughly, the same time. Whichever one came out first, and then the other one came out not too long after. And I liked Eat 'em and Smile. I didn't care for 5150 as much. OU812, I think the order that I heard those songs kind of screwed it up for me. I had the idea that OU812 was, not a good record at all. And I skipped that for, more than 10 years. And Carnal Knowledge was the one that I thought I really liked from the Hagar years. Um, but OU812's got some of the best songs. Uh, I love Cobble Wobble. I love Black and Blue now. And that was one of the songs that at the time I thought, oh, what are you doing? Why are you doing a song like that? And then Finish What You Started. I thought, oh, that's okay, but I didn't realize the rest of the record was so good. And I really like Mine All Mine. I really like AFU Naturally Wired. I love Cobble Wobble, Source of Infection. And then, the Feel So Good and When It's Love, don't need it. That's not for me. But that is one of my that it's hard to say what's my favorite from the Hagar era. It's OU812 or Cardinal Knowledge, but then I played 5150 not too long ago. God, that was good. you know. So and then Balance, I kind of skipped Balance at the time. Turns out that thing's a whole lot better than I thought it was, and it's got one of my favorite songs of theirs from either era, which is Aftershock. Not anything crazy, but just really, really good. Van Halen 3, tried it. I tried it and I like a lot of it, but it's a whole lot different from any of this other stuff. So then A Different Kind of Truth comes out, and I guess maybe I was expecting, another Women and Children First, all the 50 minutes of music, some long songs on here. Some of them weren't really your 3 minute catchy radio friendly thing, and I missed it, man, and that's on me. I'm the one that stands to lose there because I should have been blasting this thing for years and years. So anyway, I'm on fire for this thing right now. That's why I wanted to throw something up there. I haven't put anything up in about a month, and this is what I really want to talk about. Always great to have Edward Van Halen whenever I'm doing a vlog. My cardboard cutout I got from I bought that from the college when they were doing football games, and they said you want to during COVID if you want to put a cutout of yourself so it looks like there's fans in the stands. And I said, well, there doesn't need to be a cutout of me, but can I put him? And that's what I did. And then of course at the end of the season I got to keep it. But anyway, couple things I wanted to mention. Roth's career, like I said, his solo career had run its course. I've been playing this lately, and this is absolutely fantastic. And it's got John Lowry on guitar, which of course is John 5. This thing right here, here's where, the funny thing is I believe Roth was allowed, the band, Edward said that, the band doesn't really care which songs you put on there because we were good every night. So Roth, you go ahead and you pick the song. So apparently he picked the songs on here. And I don't think he really had, any which way he went, we were going to hear his flaws. But that's a good record to listen to again, to hear the music, the band's really kicking it. And then the other thing, I want to jump back to this book and just talk a little bit about how, there's all this stuff out there and you don't know what's, the Van Halen camp kept everything close to the vest and you don't hear much inside stuff. And then I know the Van Halens tried to keep this book from coming out, and the story is this guy was with Edward asked this guy to document him in 5150 for what was it 212 days and nights with the Genius, and then he ended up he didn't get paid for his work never saw the light of day, and then the guy tried to put it out and they tried to stop it, and then it ended up coming out, so here it is. But the reason I point this out is because there's a lot of funny stuff in there, and if you can believe it, um, pretty wild, not party wild, just like strange things that go on down there. And I'm not talking about, I just read it, it's just like, here's how things go, You got your own studio. You're the greatest ever. This is this guy's version of what went on there. And there's some good, interesting stories. And the one I wanted to point out was about Roth. During all this, Roth asked that guy, and what's his name? Andrew Bennett, asked him, "Hey, could you come to my place in Pasadena, my mansion, and I want you to do some work for me." So the guy went to Roth's mansion, and essentially, spoiler on this one story, but he went over there and was met with catering, and so after the catering, the catering's here, and then I guess we're out in the backyard or something, and then Roth comes out and proceeds to do karate stuff for like over an hour, and that was the end of that. And the guy was like, I'm not really sure why he had me out there, that kind of thing. So nothing came of that either, but just another insight into the strange greatness of L. Roth. So that's it. I'm a big fan of Different Kind of Truth. That's all I'm talking about here. If you already feel the way I'm feeling now, and you probably think I'm a dunce for taking so long to come around, I don't blame you. If you haven't really dug into that record, if you're like me, a fan of the original 6 records with Roth, and then somehow this never really got into your stream of consciousness, get in there. Get in there and just listen to the guitar, if nothing else, but there's good songs. It's a band on fire. Even though I think there's too many songs, there's plenty of good stuff on there. So, Different Kind of Truth. I'm all in on this one.